Welcome back to Cycling Unboxed, and today I've got a bit of a different video. Normally I go over one bike at a time, but today I've managed to line up all three tiers of the Specialized Aethos. Starting over here in a size 54, not my size, we have the Aethos that comes with a brand new 105. In the middle we've got it with ultegra, and on the right we have the full-blown S-Works and Endurance. For the video, I actually wanted to go over a multitude of things. I want to go over the different weights, I want to go over what different components they come with, and just how the bikes differ in general. So with the intro out of the way, let's start with the weights. One thing to bear in mind with these is that this bike has the newest 105 group set on it, whereas these two have the previous generation's Ultegra and Durace. Second thing is that this is a size 54, and it also does not have pedals on it, so you can add about 250 grams to the total weight. We've got 7.7 kilos for this one. We have 7.2 kilos for the Ultegra level here. And for the full shebang S-Works here, I've got 6.77 kilos. Other than that, these bikes have come mostly stock. Apart from this saddle, everything is stock on these bikes. I must say that the cheapest one here, I thought it was actually going to be a bit heavier, but it did surprise me. But like I said, when you add pedals on there, it does bring it up to nearly 8 kilos. Can you call it a climbing bike then? Yeah. Amazingly, the top of the range one, even in size 58, which is my size, it still comes in under the UCI weight limit, so you would have to add weight to that bike, only if you wanted to race it in the UCI. Well, with the fun bit, the weight's out of the way, why don't we start comparing the components of the bike? And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the frame itself, because I actually think Specialized Aethos' frames do some of the best paint jobs on the market out there. I'll bring you in for a closer look. We'll start at the bottom as usual, and it actually comes in this nice white, but it's actually a pearlescent red. I'm going to try and see if I can get in closer for you. But it's actually a pretty sweet paint job. It's actually very simple, very understated, but it's actually got some detail into it. There's also no big Specialized on the down tube. All the Specialized logos come up on the side here. And then when we get to the head tube is also different. They have a different logo setup with a lot more details on the head tube here. Next up on the Ultegra version, so they actually have this semi-naked carbon, which I quite like. I actually think it's really cool to see the carbon underneath. But when you get it in proper light under sunlight, I'll overlay some B-roll with that as well, you do get some blue coming through, so it's actually got a bit of a blue, pearlescent blue sparkle to it. I don't know how they've done pearlescent blue on matte black, but it is a very cool paint job. It's a lot easier to see on this paint job what they've got on the front here. Finally, on the lightest bike here, we have this absolutely amazing textured kind of matte, it's like a brushed aluminium, but it's really cool. I imagine the paint on this version is actually a little bit lighter than the paint on the other bikes, but I honestly love what they've done with this one. It's totally different, totally unique, and you just won't see it on any other stock bike out there. This one is one of the first generation ones, so they don't actually do this paint job anymore, I believe. You would have to buy it secondhand if you want this paint job, but it's a really cool brushed look. Next, we've got the handlebars. The first two come with a very stock handlebar setup, quite literally just your bar and stem. And on the 105 version here, we've just got a normal aluminium bar. I'd imagine this is what's Specialized stock on all their lower level bikes as well. Then as we move up a level, the stem stays the same, but actually the bars actually become a carbon handlebar. So they're still a round shape, but they become carbon there. Then finally, if we bring ourselves to the full S-Works here, it does come with a Roval Alpinist. And once again, this is a circular handlebar setup. This is one of the first generations, so it's purely as light as it can be and as stiff as it can be as a one piece. I think for the seat posts, they are all exactly the same seat posts. So they all come with their own Aethos or Alpinist seat post. Doesn't matter which generation you get, they all come with the same lightweight one. Coming up next on my list, we're going to go with the wheel sets. And starting with the 105 version here, we've got the DT Swiss R470 wheels, and to be honest, they're a pretty standard beginner bike wheel. It's not a wheel I would personally like to see on my bike, especially when I've just spent £5,000 on it. But it does mean you have options to upgrade in the future and save a lot of extra weight. Then if we get to the Ultegra level here, we do get the Roval Alpinist wheels. Just a nice standard wheel set, 30mm deep, but they are pretty light, mostly carbon. They come with DT Swiss's own hubs here, and that is the only difference when we get to the S-Works versions. It comes with the Specialized own Roval hubs, which I believe are a little bit lighter, but they still use DT Swiss internals. I also believe they're a little bit more aerodynamic just from their shape and design, but I can imagine the differences are very marginal. That's the components there. Now let's get onto a few extra touches. First of all three of the bikes come with exposed cables until it meets the frame out the front. Even on the Alpinist handlebars, they still don't have internal cables. I believe this is actually an easy way for the frame to be a little bit lighter, as you don't need as much structural integrity or complications around the front of the head tube to route those cables. Me personally though, if I'm spending £12,000 on a bike, I quite like integrated cables personally. For others though, the ease of maintenance might suit you a lot better. The final thing I'd actually like to mention is this. I don't like this. It looks a bit weird. They don't sit together very well. If this was a little bit narrower and fit with a top tube here, with the stem, sorry, then I think it would actually look a lot better. But it kind of just looks like it's been placed on top there and doesn't fit very well. When it comes to ride feel, I've actually personally ridden this bike itself, and the place, of course, as you would expect, where it really excels is going uphill. The bike has this very kind of flicky side to side feel. Even when you're sitting in the saddle, it just feels like every single pedal stroke that you're doing has lots of propulsion to it. This is of course a subjective feel, whether you're going any faster, I don't know. For me personally, I would only buy a bike like this if I actually lived in the big mountains. Here around the UK, where generally the hills are a bit shorter and steeper, but there's also lots of flats and lots of rolling in this country. And I just don't think this bike suits that kind of terrain. Moreover, when you are on the flats of this bike, it's probably only a couple of watts slower, but it gets in your head and it feels like you can feel it. Personally, I prefer a more aerodynamic bike, and especially with new bikes coming out, such as the SL8, where they've really brought that frame weight down, and they've actually got the same bottom bracket as the Aethos here, so it's got the same flicky fast feel to it. I think the SL8 for the same price as this is a better choice. As well, I don't think this is Specialized's real big downfall here. Unless you are buying the S-Works version of their bikes, the other bikes are a bit naff. The components just aren't as good, such as when you're buying from a brand like Canyon, even their bottom or mid-range tiers, they come with really good components still. With Specialized, they really cheap out here, and the only good thing you're getting is the frame, and maybe the group set if you're buying ultegra. I mean, even with the 105 version here, you're spending £5,000 for basic wheels, basic handlebars. Everything else is great, apart from the new 105 is a little bit heavy. But really, for £5,000, upgrade the handlebars a little bit, make them a bit lighter, upgrade the wheels a little bit, make them a bit lighter, and you would have a brilliant £5,000 bike here. One thing I do actually like about the Aethoses though, is that they come with a much more traditional look to them. Even with the cables hanging out the front, because it's all Di2 now, it looks so much cleaner, even with the cables. And for me, if you are buying a bike like this to go ride the big mountains, disc brakes are the way to go. Some people aren't going to like hearing this, and this is a personal opinion, but when you're descending those big alpine climbs, the difference disc brakes make are just undeniable. And well, to use a frame that gets this light with disc brakes, I think they've done a pretty good job here, even for the mid-tier. Well everyone, that was a closer look at all three tiers of Aethos. If you have any thoughts or if you've ridden this bike, let me know what you think about them. I've been Jason, this has been Cycling Unboxed. I'll see you in the next video.